thank you everyone for joining us today as part of our Entrepreneurship Speaker Series with Rachel Paul. Today we're going to have it facilitated by, Roberto Martinez, who's pursuing his PhD in epidemiology and biostatistics. With that said, Roberto, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you do have any questions throughout the chat, please just post your questions in the chat and Roberto will ask them. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, please just post in the comment section and we'll get those to Roberto as well. So with that said, I'll leave it to you, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Doug. And it's with special excitement that I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Rachel Paul to our Case Western Reserve University Entrepreneurship Alumni Speaker Series. Rachel is the founder of Rachel Paul Nutrition LLC and a dear alumni of Case Western Reserve. She earned her Bachelor of Science in 2012 and a Master's of Science and registered dietitian in 2013. Then she furthered her education and earned a Doctor of Philosophy on Behavioral Nutrition from Columbia University in 2017. So Rachel is an accomplished nutritionist and entrepreneur, and through her LLC, she has helped hundreds of clients lose weight, and most important of all, to improve their quality of life. So today, Rachel will discuss her career journey, and she will focus her story on an idea. When we had a phone conversation a few weeks ago, she said, well, I want to focus on producing results versus accumulating degrees, a case for purposeful decision-making and real-world experience. I almost cried when she said that. I said, you're talking to my soul. So I'm very excited to hear Rachel's story. And why don't we go ahead and let's start by getting to know a little bit about you and let us know where are you from, what is your experience, education, and path to your enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to Case Western for my undergrad and for then my master's and the internship to become a registered dietitian. So my bachelor's was a Bachelor of Science in Nutrition. My master's is a Master's of Science in Public Health Nutrition. And then to become a registered dietitian, you do, it's kind of similar to a medical residency where you do a year of practical, for RDs, it's 1 year of practical experience, and then you take an exam at the end, a national exam. So I did that at Case Western, and then I spent 5 years in New York City getting my PhD, and now I live in San Francisco. And kind of how my business came about, when I first became a dietitian, I really wanted to give back to the college population because I felt personally I had a lot of struggles. You have all of this newfound autonomy when you first get to college, right? Not only do you have to go to class, get good grades, join clubs, get summer internships, all the things, but then you also have to like completely take care of yourself, right? And it's just a lot of pressure all at once. And so I felt that I could help the population in terms of easy recipes and science-based nutrition information, because there's a lot of non-science-based information out there. And so I started my blog and the social media accounts right when I finished my dietetic internship. So this was back in 2013. But I didn't do much with it at first because I was in a PhD program and I was just so busy. So I just didn't really have time. And then the last year of my PhD program, I was actually in an internship that was a 2-hour commute each way. And it was like a good 2 hours. And so I really disliked that. I loved the internship, but the commute was so terrible. And at that point, kind of the winter before my last semester of my PhD, I had figured out some ethical ways to get on the Explore page of Instagram. And my account on Instagram was growing just really exponentially. And I thought, well, let me try to be an entrepreneur for this last semester of my PhD program. And if it doesn't work out, if I can't make any money doing this, at least I have a good excuse for not working for 6 months because I was finishing my PhD program. If like employers ask, what were you doing at that time? I can say I was studying. So I thought I might as well try it. So the internship with the 2-hour commute, it could have become a job, but I decided to not pursue that, and decided to just try to make it as an entrepreneur. So that's kind of how it started.
Awesome. And one interesting aspect of your journey is that, many PhD students dream with an academic career. However, you've mentioned during our past phone conversation 2 experiences that shaped your thoughts on education and also motivated you to choose the entrepreneur's route. You said that one was during undergrad and the next one was during your PhD. And so would you mind sharing these 2 stories with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first maybe like a light bulb moment was when I was the president of the Student Dietetic Association, and we were creating these different events for students throughout the year. And the first event of the year was it wasn't just for nutrition students, it was kind of for all healthcare students. And we were talking about the different possible careers you could take in the medical profession, and what amount of school did you need, how much, what was the average salary for that type of job. And as I was doing the research for this event, I could see that the dietitian was like the lowest salary amount. It's like, what am I doing? Why didn't anyone tell me this? This is a problem. I don't want to go through all of this school and not be able to, make very much money. And so that was when I first started thinking, maybe should I look into other things? Is there something else I can do with this nutrition degree? And that's not to say that dietitians don't make a lot of money. Certainly many absolutely do. And you can go in a lot of different directions with it. But this was just kind of national data and just comparing national data across different medical professions. So that was the first thing. And it is something I would recommend anyone do, is to really have a kind of a long-term projection, which we'll talk about later. And what are your ultimate goals? And is this education important for that ultimate goal? First story. Then the second story, in my PhD program, we were working on like a 6-week grant through HHS. And part of the grant was interviewing different public and private people in the public and private sector. So that's what we were doing, and we were doing this back in New York, and we also went to DC to conduct these different interviews with kind of people of influence type of thing. And kind of what kept recurring, the message that kept recurring from the people in the more public sector and people in academia, not so much in the private sector, was that money was really a problem, and it was so stressful to get grants to support the organization, and just the money issue was such an important issue and just kept coming up. So that got me thinking again, do I want this to be my life? Do I want to struggle financially for my entire life? I did not want that to be the case. So those were 2, I'd say, important stories for sure.
Yeah, and I love how closely related these stories are to the life and experience of our audience. And in our pursuit of happiness, many of us think that accumulating degrees will help us achieve financial success, professional satisfaction, and most important, self-satisfaction. However, as you have highlighted, this is not the case. Instead, your story highlights a mission-centric, like thinking about your goals, right? You've said, and purposeful decision-making to achieve this mission. And how do you get to your goals? So would you mind telling us a little bit about what's your calling as a person, and in your business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really twofold. The first is it's nutrition related. So to help women lose weight permanently, and then to be able to open their minds to all of these different life options. Because when you stop worrying about food, so many more things in your life open up. You're able to grow in your career. You're able to develop new relationships when that part of your life is in more, if you feel like it's more in your control. So that's the nutrition piece. And then second is I would love to be an example of what is possible for dietitians. So we talked about before, a lot of times, especially if you work in a hospital, you're kind of limited, not everyone, but some people feel that they're limited in how much money they can make, how much they can contribute as a dietitian. And so I would like to show that it's possible to have a large impact.
That's so awesome. And how did you arrive to this calling? You're saying, well, I want to help women to achieve their potential by losing weight, living their best. How did you arrive at this calling?
Yeah, so that one was really just personal experience. So when I was struggling so much with really emotional eating and losing just kind of 5 pounds, I just couldn't really lose those 5 pounds. And I was so unhappy at that, a little bit of a higher weight. And I would just think about food all the time and think about how unhappy I was all the time. And once I was able to figure that out, then, so much else in my life could open up. And so I would just love for other women to have that same experience. And then with the being an example of what's possible for dietitians. So I am in a new coach training program. And yes, it is another form of education, but I did my due diligence research and I do 100% think that this is worth it. And in the program, this life coach, she talks about being an example of what's possible for other life coaches, the head of this program. And so I'm kind of adopting her language, and I think that's such a good idea and such a good way to kind of have a life's purpose. And so that's how I got my kind of the language for my second calling type of thing.
Yeah, your story reminds me of a quote from a writer called Frederick Buechner, and he says, "The place you are called to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." And as I think about it, in the United States, the prevalence of adult obesity is 42.4% in 2017 and 2018. And among women, the prevalence of obesity was 39.7% among those aged 20 to 39. So that's almost 4, essentially, out of 10 women. So there's this huge need, and then your calling is meeting this need by being able to provide the services that your LLC provides. So tell us a little bit about your LLC. Was your mission the same mission that you have now at the outset? Has anything changed? What have you accomplished?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, and I think this is what a lot of people do, I was very broad, and very general in what I was trying to accomplish. So I just wanted to help people with overeat or with healthy eating, generally. And then when I started taking it more seriously, I needed to kind of produce an income through this. I was reading some entrepreneurship books, and they really talked about solving your audience's problems. So not creating content just based on what you want to create content on, creating content specifically based on what your audience needs help with. And so that's what I asked them. I now do an annual survey. If you're just starting out, you can do a survey more often. And I asked them, what do you need help with regarding nutrition, and weight loss? And kind of my main pain points in entrepreneurship, we call it the pain points, were kind of no hassle meal prep for one person. So that was, there are so many recipes online, but a lot of times you just need a recipe for one person, right? You don't need to make 4 servings type of thing. And then weight loss was the number 2. So instead of just general healthy eating, I really focused on cooking for one person, and then weight loss. And my audience, what they really need help with is, yes, they're exercising, yes, they're eating healthy, but they can't lose those kind of last 10 pounds type of thing. So my, real sweet spot is helping people who are already making changes, but not seeing results.
That's great. And just a shameless plug, I know Bob Sopko is like one of our attendees, but like through their office, they also share business model canvas, which is a business planning tool. And in relationship to that, I wanted to ask you, Rachel, could you share some of these tools that perhaps you asked during, that you used during you were trying to find out what your customer needed?
Yeah, so initially I used Google Forms, which is, free, and you can just create a Google form and have people answer in that. Another, easy way is to, on social media, use the kind of the plugins that they already have. So for instance, on Instagram, you can insert like a question box and people can just type in their answers into the question box. So that I use both now. I use both the question box, on social media type of thing, or I still use the Google form because that's an easy way to see all of your data at once type of thing.
Tell us a little bit about that first client you had. How did you feel? How did you get it? How that happened?
Yeah, so my business looks differently now. I don't really see clients one-on-one anymore. But initially that was how I started because with the one-on-one model, you can charge so much more per person, right? And I really needed to support myself. So that was what I did. And so when I was first seeing my first few clients or getting on really sales calls for my first few clients, I was, very scared to do it. I would try to think of any reason why that person would not a good fit to work with me so that I didn't have to tell them what my prices were. And it just you as you do it more, you just get more comfortable. And I even see myself now, like if I do have to get on a sales call, I'm like Rocky just because I haven't been doing it. I'm kind of out of practice. So it's the kind of thing that you just get better with practice.
And this is actually very interesting because as in our conversation notes, I have that with your first customers, you wanted an excuse to get off the phone. So you didn't have to tell them your price. You didn't have to kind of market yourself as you don't like selling things, you said.
Right.
So how did you actually overcome this?
Honestly, just with practice. And also then once I started, I had seen clients one-on-one when I was in my PhD program because I worked for another dietitian, seeing clients on the side just to make extra money because living in New York City is incredibly expensive and a $20,000 a year stipend doesn't cut it. So I did have some experience, but then once I started seeing clients on my own and just developing great results for them, and then also doing more and more sales calls and kind of perfecting my process, then it just kind of becomes kind of rote and very easy, which is good.
So tell us a little bit, what is unique about your business? How is it different from other businesses, and how did you get to this sweet spot?
Yeah. So a lot of it's interesting, there's kind of a divide in dietitians where some people think that weight loss is fine and other dietitians focus more on intuitive eating and kind of the health at every size approach. And so what I think is unique about me is I kind of merge the two. So yes, if you want to have a weight loss goal, that is awesome, and you should totally do that. But also let's take into account a lot of these intuitive eating practices and being more mindful and kind of correcting a lot of those incorrect beliefs you might have about food and nutrition. So I think that that's unique about me is that I'm able to speak to both of those sides. So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is that I do now, the model I have for my business now is an online membership program. And so that is unique also. Most dietitians still see clients one-on-one or do group coaching. But I have now this online membership, which just takes me out of the process, which is great.
So as you were saying, you first, during your PhD, you worked with one-on-one clients. That's where you started getting the idea of the business. then you also are like reading books, and you have these two prior experiences during the undergrad and the PhD that are making you think, what do I do with my training? And then you said you also love like having some reliable recurring revenue as well, right?
Yeah.
But you are about to jump into this entrepreneur venture, and as many of us probably think, we are like get startled by, well, how much money do I need? What do I require? Can I actually make it in the business world? So would you mind telling us a little bit about like, how did you actually get started with the LLC idea? What did you require to make your dream happen?
Yeah, so when I first started out, well, I guess kind of backing up a little bit, the summer before I had come across a blogging course, and that really opened my mind up to the possibility of making money online. I didn't really know that that was a thing before. And in this course, they talked about creating an online course that you can sell, and a way to get people through your email funnel to sell your product is to either blog or to use social media to get new people into your courses. And so that's what I thought I would start out doing when I started working for myself initially. But then I also came across this other education program, and their focus was one-on-one coaching because, and it is true, it's much easier to support yourself if you're charging more money per person. And so I'm glad that I came across that, because I mean that was very helpful. Right off the bat, if you're charging a few $100s per person and you only need a few people, in order to support yourself. And so that's how I started. And then because my marketing, my Instagram was growing so quickly, I couldn't handle all of the influx of people who wanted coaching. And so, a lot of these business books, which I'll talk about at the end, they really focus on or stress, stop trading your time for dollars. So there's only so much time in the day, and there's only kind of so much you can charge, right? Otherwise, it just gets kind of silly if you're charging so many thousands of dollars to work with you. Most people aren't going to do that, right? So I created then a course because, yes, everyone is different, but I do end up saying a lot of the same things with coaching, right, with weight loss coaching. And so I created PowerPoint slides and recorded them on QuickTime on my computer, no special, technology or anything. And I put all of those videos into a course on a platform called Teachable. There are a lot of similar platforms like Kajabi and things. I like Teachable, so I use Teachable. So anyway, I had coaching, and then I switched over to a course. The problem with both the course and coaching is that you do have to be like constantly selling and constantly getting new people. And this is still true with a membership, but just kind of less so, because in a membership, not everyone will carry over to the next month, but also not everyone will cancel their membership for the next month. So you do have some reliable revenue, and that was really what I wanted, is to have that reliable revenue so I could have some kind of more peace of mind for the next month and for the year type of thing. And I launched my membership last January, so not this January, but the January before that. And I really had no idea if it would work at all. I was very scared to launch it, but it's great. It's worked very well, and I've done a lot of improvements and taking a lot of feedback from what people have told me they want differently, and always improving it. But it's truly amazing what you can do online right now. So kind of rambled there, but yeah.
And when did you decide to start your actually become an LLC and to set a framework for your business, how that came about?
Yeah, so I started out just as a sole proprietor, but I did have insurance to be a dietitian. So if you have some kind of, professional degree, you should be able to get insurance of some kind. So I did have that. And then I became an LLC maybe in October of my first year. So I started in January, so October. But my advice would be to become an LLC as soon as possible, just because you want to protect yourself, right? Because it's unlikely that someone's going to sue you, but in case that they do, you just want to be protected, and you want them to be able to go after your business assets and not your personal ones. So, I did it kind of late. I would recommend doing it just as soon as possible.
A very interesting feature of your story, I think, is how, as we are listening to it, then we hear that you had these experiences, like in undergrad and the PhD. You had these aha moments of like, why am I doing this, undergoing this amount of education? Also, like, what education do I need as well? And at the same time, then you start like trying things out little by little, doing your own research with customers, which is interesting, as we typically think that we probably can create just a business model, throw it out, get investors, and go big, right? But your story is one that you start from the beginning and building little by little. And I think that's a really, really, really interesting, inspiring part of your story to all of us who are listening.
Yeah, and I think, I think one other thing with that's so important is that with online, you do not need investors. You can start creating money right from the get-go. You need, like $0 to get started. So I just think that's so powerful for anyone wanting to start, an online business.
Awesome. And actually, we have a question from Catherine Madalena. And Catherine, if you would like to unmute yourself, you can ask the question. Would you like to pose the question to Rachel?
Sure, thanks. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just, while we were talking about, monetizing your business, I just wanted to know if you could discuss how you get paid partnerships on Instagram and how that side of your business works.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people kind of like that and kind of find that glamorous. And it is nice to get a large sum from a company once in a while, but that's not how I'll speak to that second, but I just want to say this first. That's not where I want to see any significant portion of my income come from, because it's just so out of my control. Because companies in 6 months can say, oh, we don't want to work with influencers anymore. We want to do something else, or we want to do, paid ads on TV or whatever it is. And it's also working with companies it's a lot of times it's just a one-off thing, right? So you post once, you get, a check, and that's it. It's not any kind of reliable. So I really prefer more reliable income. But anyway, back to the question. You can be the one to reach out to companies, because that's not something I want to even focus on. I just have companies reach out to me, and if I think it's a good partnership, then I will, see if the rate that they're willing to pay is appropriate. And then we kind of move on from there. So I hope did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I just feel like, there's so many different nutrition blogs out there, and I do love your angle and how you approach nutrition. And I just feel like some people are constantly, teaming up with someone and posting, but I just wanted to see how that worked for your business. I guess also, how does the negotiation process go with that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I have a media kit that has my prices on it, and then a lot of times there's some negotiation. So they'll say, oh, that's outside of our budget, would you be able to work with this? And sometimes they'll say no, sometimes they'll say yes. I would say the majority of times they say no, because they're offering just such a small amount of money that it just wouldn't be worth it to me from a time standpoint. And then also, like you said, if I said yes to everything, I would be promoting things all the time, and it would just seem very inauthentic, to my audience. And then one other thing, a lot of companies, what they want to do is they only want to do an affiliate partnership. So meaning anyone who buys their product with your specific link, you get like 10% commission of that. I have found that the return of an investment on that is so low that I would never do a partnership that is only an affiliate type of partnership. So there has to be an additional kind of lump sum for the post as well.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And following up on these questions, Rachel, at the beginning of this conversation, we said you wanted to focus on like the producing results versus accumulating degrees, right?
Yeah.
And a case for purposeful decision-making and real-world experience. And I think this part of the conversation, how social media works, how this side of business works, it's a very interesting example of real-world experience and perhaps some purposeful education as well. And I don't know if did you come across with particular like trainings that you have not mentioned yet that would allow you to get to know this aspect of the business, right? That may not be as intuitive to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of books that I highly recommend, are really excellent books. I really just listen on audio so I can like do other things. I can like do housework or whatever. So that, that's to me, I like to use my time that way versus sitting down and reading. But if you like to read, that's of course wonderful. So the books are great. And then in terms of courses, truthfully, I have found a lot of courses are not very good. I have paid for a lot of courses and I just haven't been very happy with them. A few are definitely good. The one I talked about initially, the blogging course about making money online, that's an excellent one. I can link to that one in the notes. And then I do have both an Instagram course and a TikTok course, which I put a lot of effort into just because I know that so many courses are bad and I would never want to create a bad course. So I do think that those two courses are good. And then I guess the other thing would be to, if you don't want to spend the time learning something yourself, you do need to find professionals who are really good at their craft that you can then hire to do, whatever you need to do. So for example, when I first started my membership, I used Teachable, that platform I mentioned earlier, and I just uploaded new meal plans each week as a PDF. But the feedback I was getting is that people wanted to be able to modify their meal plans. And I agree that that would be helpful for them in terms of meal planning. And so I created my own website that's an interactive. It's kind of like an app where you kind of drag and drop meals, and you can adjust the meal plans that I send out each week to be suited to your calorie needs, the foods you have in your fridge, your food likes and dislikes, that type of thing. And so, but I'm not going to learn WordPress, right? I'm not going to learn how to code type of thing to create this like very complex membership site. So for, these things that you want to do that you're not going to spend years learning this new skill, finding professionals who can take that off your plate is important for sure. But I've also hired a lot of professionals that have been bad. So I would, as much as possible, do your due diligence in vetting the person ahead of time in terms of seeing their previous work. And also I would pay close attention to response time. I have found that is just very important. So, do they respond to you within an hour? Do they respond to you within 24 hours? Do they not respond to you at all? And just really take that into consideration, because when you're working with someone, a lot of times you need a response pretty quickly.
Awesome. And you are evidently a very successful person. And when I say evident, I checked your webpage and I've seen some of the testimonials from your customers who praise you for your approach to helping them with the platform as well. And it's evident of their liking of your business. So to what do you attribute your success?
I think Well, I guess two things. One thing, and this was true in school as well, is that I don't feel like I am any smarter than anyone else. I am just more organized. And I think having really good organization and planning, and taking the time to organize and plan everything, is just really critical. And then the second thing is, I'm the first to say that I don't know everything at all. And so being really open to educating myself in anything, in anything and everything. So reading as many books as possible. However, I will say, I don't move on to a new book until I feel like I have really internalized the book that I've just read. So I hear a lot of entrepreneurs say they like to read a book a week. That wouldn't work for me because I really want to internalize the messages that they're saying. So I'll listen to a book, 4 or 5 times before I move on to a new one. But just kind of knowing your limitations, of which for anyone, there are many, and being open to being wrong, being open to learning new methods of doing things, and being open to kind of starting from zero. And that's what I would say with any, if you want to start an online business, don't start from scratch. Like 100% do not start from scratch. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't spend 5 years learning what type of blog post to write. Just like take a course and write, blog posts that convert type of thing. So yeah.
We have a question from Rebecca, and I think this is actually a great segue into another section of these conversations, which relates to hurdles. What are the biggest hurdles to date and how do you overcome them? But as we think about these hurdles, I think Rebecca's question can be placed under that kind of framework. And Rebecca, would you like to unmute yourself and then pose the question to Rachel?
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 1 second. I'll pull up the question for you all. So my question is, what are the key components of promoting your business? And how do you get and maintain traffic to your site?
So what I do right now, I guess, is twofold. One is social media, and 2 is blogging. So social media is a fantastic way to get new eyes on what you're doing, or new leads is what we call it, because that's where people are. That's where people are spending their time, is on social media. And so that was something that I had to kind of grapple with in the beginning, because it felt like Instagram was so superficial, right? And I hated it. And even my best friends, that are my best friends, they're not even on Instagram type of thing. So we kind of all have this way of thinking that, social media is not a good place for people to be. However, that is where people are, right? And so learning how to grow your following, how to get new eyes on your social media accounts is incredibly important. And I would say that any new social media platform that's becoming popular, if you kind of see that, I would really take advantage of that, because in the beginning of any social media platform, it's going to be very easy for your account to grow. And so that's what we're really seeing now on TikTok, which is so great. It is so easy to grow on TikTok right now, because it's such a new platform. It will only become more and more difficult. It's going to be the same thing that happened to Facebook, the same thing that happened to Instagram. It just gets more difficult the more competition kind of gets on there. So if you can take advantage of new social media platforms to get new eyeballs on your content, you should definitely do that. And then the second thing with blogging, so it's kind of similar, where it's Google and when people are searching for things, there's a lot of competition, right? So you do have to be very strategic about what you're blogging about. So I was doing my own blogging, and I have a virtual assistant who manages Pinterest, and Pinterest was my #1 source of traffic for my blog. But I recently hired an SEO company, and they are doing a phenomenal job. They're one of the few professionals that I found that it's actually extremely helpful. And they're helping me create better blog posts to drive new traffic that way as well. So I'm not doing any paid advertising. I definitely will at some point, but I'm only doing kind of organic traffic now.
And also as a plug, there is a how to beat the Instagram algorithm that you have posted on your blog as well. And that maybe if we want to deepen in this conversation, like some of us may actually be your clients in that area.
Yeah. So as I said, I do have the 2 entrepreneurship courses. And again, as I said, I have taken a lot of courses that are bad. So I promise you my courses are good. So I have an Instagram course and I have a TikTok course.
We also have a question from Bob Sobko, and I think this is actually a very good segue into what are the future goals for the firm. So we've heard some of the struggles that relates to your company. I'm going to pose the question of what are the future goals for the firm, and I'll ask you to hold on to the answer for a second so you can hear also Bob's question. And Bob, would you like to open up your mic and pose the question?
Sure. Nice to see you, Roberto. Hopefully you're doing well. Where are you sitting? What country?
It's in Casanova, New York, south of Syracuse.
Oh, okay. Just I was curious. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
So my question is, very niche orientation start, which is brilliant because then less competitive. It's the long tail, college nutritionist. But over time, are you looking at changing the name, broadening it? Mommy nutritionist, middle. That's a struggle. It's a tough thing that I have to kind of think about.
Yep.
But it's something you're going to have to think about.
Yeah. But and I would say that's not true. I could choose to only focus on college students and make like millions of dollars that way. I could choose that. But I will say that my audience has, I don't know, shifted, or just the people who kind of resonate with it, it's actually not college students. So that's how I started. And my audience now, they're really kind of 20s to 30s year olds. And so I kind of changed my how I, why the word college is in there, to be focusing on weight loss the smart way. So instead of college nutritionists being about college students, the college part is about, using a science-based approach type of thing. I know it doesn't it's not the clearest.
Like nutritionist 101, 102. Like a class type thing. No, but I was just curious if, part of your clientele as they get older and you get older, if they wanted to stay with you in the journey, instead of having to always get that 18 to 24-year-old type thing. That's really, really hard. If you, like you said before, if you get somebody to engage with you and you can continue to engage that's better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many things with that, right? There will always be new college students, right? My problem that I found with college students is that, and I can speak directly from myself as a previous college student, is that they are not really on top of things, and they also don't have money to spend, right? So it was not a good target population for me to try to sell to, just because of those 2 reasons. Kind of when you're out of college and you're working, and you have more money to spend, you have more of a schedule and more of a structure to your day, and you have more time to focus on your health. That's just kind of an easier time to spend money and focus on your health. But so with that being said, I absolutely have thought about targeting other populations. The reason I haven't done or spent a lot of time on that now is because I'm really trying to grow this current business that I have to many millions of dollars. And then once I do, and I can truly remove myself, then I will be able to spend the mental energy that's needed to create these additional businesses. But I'm not going to take my current business and move it to mom's or move it to something else. I would create an entire separate business for that. And I have already done that, which was maybe too early, or maybe not. So I do love working with brides-to-be. And so I do have the wedding nutritionist blog and social media handles and things.
Okay.
And so that's an example of how, if I were going to focus on mom, postpartum or, menopause or anything like that, I would just make it a separate business. Right now, it takes too much of my current mental energy, and I want to spend all my mental energy right now building up this current one. But it's hard because as an entrepreneur, you have all these other ideas and you
Right.
want to help all of these different people, right? So it is hard to be narrow and focused. But from everything I've read from entrepreneurs I've talked to, everyone says, just focus on one thing, make that, the millions of dollars business, and then focus on the other things.
Saying no is more important than saying yes at times to a distraction, and then you could lose your focus. So that's very smart. Scaling, not having a good business can kill you, but scaling can also kill you. That you'll be in so many different areas that you're not giving the depth of care to the area you want to. And as you said, you seem very organized, like you mentioned, but you don't want to give up a book until you really have learned from it. So the same thing. And I'll put it in the chat here. There's a product that I like to read. It's called Blinkist, where it takes the major components of a book and basically boils it down to 15 minutes. So you could kind of revisit an old book. It'd be like going out to coffee with someone and they explain to you the book and the main premise. Even though they spent 14 hours reading it, they can tell you in 15 minutes, these are the salient points.
Awesome.
I think I've come across that. Yeah, it's a good resource. Sorry.
No problem. And we have 2 questions too from other participants. And I'd like to, as I allow them to unmute themselves and pose the question, I'd just like to make reference to some of the things you've said during this conversation. One is that you have your pulse on the data, right? You're seeing who your customers initially were. Now they shifted, and then you're focusing on that customer, right? Then you have developed kind of a business plan towards that, and you have found tools in your environment, either reading books or actual professionals that can provide you services to build your strategies, to build your business, growing little by little from a solo entrepreneur to growing. So as we're thinking about grow, I think Matthew's question comes in very nicely. And Matthew, would you like to pose the question? And we have also a question from Lori, so let's make sure we give her time to pose the question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it quick. What I would like to ask is, have you ever hired somebody? And if so, what was your experience with it? Good, bad, would recommend, not recommend?
Yeah, so I have used a lot of contractors. So I don't have any person that I have hired full-time, but I think that's actually a smart thing to do, because this way you can find different people who have very specific areas of expertise. So for instance, this SEO company I have hired, they're phenomenal. Versus if I hired one person to do all of these different tasks, it's impossible to be a super professional at every single thing, right? And then also if you take on a full-time employee, you are responsible for paying their salary and responsible a lot of times for paying their benefits. So this way, with working with contractors, I don't take on all of that responsibility. So yeah, and as I said before, I would, whenever you are looking to hire someone, either a contractor or a full-time or part-time person, would really vet them beforehand and don't rush into it, because a lot of times it doesn't work out. So I would try to, assess whether they're a good fit ahead of time if possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And also related to growth, I think Lori's question comes in very nicely. Lori, would you like to pose the 2 questions that you have on the chat?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Thank you, Rachel, also for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm thinking to start a social media platform because I'm a dietetic student at Case Western, actually. I was wondering, how do you balance between the free content you upload there and on other platforms versus your paid membership? And also, how do you stay competitive since the field is continuously growing and there's a lot of platforms that may not be as evidence-based as you are?
So the first question, what was the first question? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. How do you balance between free content on social media versus your membership?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I hear it a lot. So honestly, people pay for, and this is something I read, and it's so true, people pay for the structure. So this is true for kind of any online business. So much of the content that's in their paid programming is on their blog and like different blog posts. But what people pay for is the structure. It's for like the hand holding them through the process. And so that's kind of what it is. I mean, a lot of what I talk about is already on my blog, is on my Instagram. I don't hold really anything back. But what people want is when people feel like they have invested in themselves, then they want to make the change. And so I would say the more you can put out for free, the better. And also, people are not paying close attention to you. People are not reading every single blog post. They are not reading every single Instagram post. They're just seeing, a few maybe. And so it doesn't really, they don't think of it as all of this content is here and I can just like go through it individually. And I would think about the next time you go to anyone goes to purchase something online, think about that, likely you're making a purchase because you want to invest in yourself. You want to make the change, and making this purchase, people feel, is a vote for kind of the person they want to become. So I really wouldn't worry about that, but it's a great question. And then the second question was about competition, right? Again, I wouldn't worry about that as well, because the way that the way that a person, me, you, talks about whatever, area of expertise it is, let's say nutrition, the way that you talk about it is going to be different than the way that I talk about it. And some people are going to resonate with the way that I talk about it, and some people are going to resonate with the way that you talk about it. So I know I'm not really saying anything special. I'm not saying anything that someone else hasn't already said. I'm just saying it in a certain way. And also, like I said before, if you can really take advantage of social media, especially when it's new and when it's growing, then you can, grow a large following yourself. And then it's just kind of easier when you have a larger following.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We just have maybe 2-3 more minutes, and like to make sure that please post your question on the chat if there's a burning question before we end this conversation. But I'd like to also summarize a few points which I think are very interesting. You're speaking about understanding what your product is, which is in this case not just sharing the information, but also it's the hand holding, as you said, right? Like what your customer wants. That's the one product that you're giving them, and which also goes back to understanding the pains and the gains, or the wants and the needs of your customers too, right? You gotta know your customer base and be data driven. Let me just ask you the last question, because and then I'll hand it back to Doug and ask you, what are the key principles or lessons learned that you would like to share with our audience before we leave? And I will actually post the list of books that you share with me on the chat for anybody that would like to look at them. But any key principles, lessons learned that you want to end this conversation with?
Yeah. So I would really think critically about what your goal is. And what's so funny is, like, I knew when I was in college that I wanted to be like on TV and like, a kind of a media person. Like, knew that that's what I wanted. but my kind of ego got the better of me, and I got all of these additional degrees and spent, you know, so many years in school, not really producing anything, just being in school for the sake of having kind of letters after my name, which I you know, it's absolutely good to have degrees for sure. But really think about, you know, if you know what you want to do, just to go do it, you know, likely, you know, unless your profession specifically requires a certain degree, you can do whatever you want to do, especially online. Oh my gosh, just the possibilities are endless. So, you know, have a real conversation with yourself and, you know, ask yourself, what do I want? And, you know, what exact experience or education do I need to get there? And if you can get practical experience, you know, while you're deciding whether additional degrees are necessary, I would 100% say to do that. And then also, like we talked about, and we'll put this list of books in the notes, just really educate yourself and on anything and everything that you possibly can. Use your walks to campus to listen to books. These books that I recommend are incredible, really amazing books. I wish I had them earlier. I can't wait for you to read them. They're awesome. And yeah, I guess just be honest with yourself and have a good kind of conversation with yourself as soon as possible.
Rachel, thank you so much for these pearls of wisdom, and you know, I really appreciate your time and just being here. I'll hand these now to Doug.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel and Roberto, for taking the time today to share a little bit about your journey. And just to do a shameless plug of upcoming speaker series events, tomorrow we have Sarah Morgenstern from Flourish Ventures. She's going to talk a little bit about social entrepreneurship and investing as it pertains to social ventures. And then next week, we have John Grabowski, who's the historian and senior vice president for research and publications for both Case Western Reserve University and the Western Reserve Historical Society. He's going to talk about entrepreneurship in Cleveland and the history around that. So talking about the Rockefellers and, you know, kind of the golden age of entrepreneurship in Cleveland and some of the famous people who helped build the city that some of us live in. So feel free to sign up on campus groups. And with that, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.